The recent departure of U.S. Ambassador Gary Locke, after serving 2.5 years in his post, has garnered notable media attention. During the farewell conference here in Beijing, Locke concluded what he had achieved during his posting. He praised the development of economic cooperation between China and the U.S. and criticized China for its human rights record. The attention Locke has received in China comes not only from his position as the principal representative of the U.S. in China, but also from his lack of shyness to vocalize his and the U.S. concerns about China. However, no doubt, much of this attention stems from his Chinese ancestry. To mark his departure, Chinese state-owned China News Service published an editorial entitled, "Farewell, Gary Locke." It acrimoniously described Mr. Locke as a rotten banana with yellow skin but a white heart. Yes, someone actually said that, and it got published. It also went on to say that he's good at making a show of everything and promoting himself. Online, there's been lots of discussion over Gary Locke, his departure, and also his Chinese editorial. To hear what's being said, let's now join our researcher, Esther Dong, in the newsroom. First off, Esther, what are Chinese net users' general impressions of Gary Locke?
Well, as you said, Mr. Locke has remained a hot topic among Chinese net users, partly, of course, due to his Chinese lineage. And based on what I've seen, I like to say that lots of Chinese posters are strongly impressed with the way he arrived in China. Many posters highly praise him as down-to-earth and think he set a good example for Chinese officials. For example, this poster on tiexue.net comments, "When flying, he chose the economy class. He and his family took the baggage themselves. That was a huge contrast compared to Chinese officials' practices. I really hope our leaders can learn from him and try to live like ordinary people. That will be good for officialdom." But there are also others who think differently, like this one on Baidu.com. "It was just for show. Doing this, he tried to build a good image among Chinese people and promote so-called American values."
Well, Gary Locke certainly did a lot of things during his stay in China. Which of his achievements are Chinese net users talking about the most?
From visiting Xinjiang and Tibet to traveling a long way to his Chinese hometown in Guangdong to his efforts to cut visa waiting times for Chinese people to enter the U.S. His movements have been enthusiastically followed by Chinese media and net users. But I like to say it seems that the most discussions focus on his efforts to release PM 2.5 data in China. As we mentioned yesterday in our hot comment section, PM 2.5 is a key variable for judging air quality, as they are small particles less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, which pose the most significant threat to people's health. These particles are so small that they get deep into the lung tissue and result in all kinds of breathing problems and disease. It was when Gary Locke served as the ambassador in China that the U.S. Embassy began to release the figures in Chinese cities. Many feel grateful to him, like Wang Zhanyang on Weibo.com. "I want to say thanks to Gary Locke because it's him who let us know what PM 2.5 is." But many others think the praise has been too exaggerated, like Yang Guang很活泼, who has this analysis. "I can't agree that some people view Gary Locke as something of a hero due to the release of PM 2.5 figures. Our central government had decided to eventually treat environmental protection seriously too, and to treat this as something as important as political and economic reforms. It's not because of him that we have PM 2.5 in China. And don't forget the U.S. withdrawal from the Kyoto Protocol."
Putting aside these arguments, Mr. Locke explained he resigned from the post because he would rejoin his family in Seattle and pay more attention to his kids' education. How do net users view that? Why do they think Gary Locke left his position earlier than expected?
Well, on this question, there's quite a range of opinions in the online community. Many people aren't buying his words. First, Paulo has this question. Is he scared of the smog in Beijing? And 我爱首都 has this guess. Probably he's preparing for the next U.S. presidential election. While this poster on Sohu.com has another thought. I heard some people say that Gary Locke tried to stir up a jasmine flower revolution in China like what happened in some African countries. He tried to promote this online, but it was strongly opposed by Chinese net users. That's why he finally left China. But there are also a certain number of posters who think his explanation makes sense. One typical example is Bing Qi, who writes on Beijing Youth Daily. It's not the first time that Gary Locke gave up his political career for his family. In the U.S., many officials successfully balance their career and family. He's not only a political figure, but also a father.
Now let's go back to the unusual editorial published by the China News Service, which isn't that friendly to Mr. Locke. The article has become quite a topic in the foreign media. How is it received by Chinese web users?
Well, not well at all, I have to say. I've seen numerous posters who are indignant with this editorial. First, have a listen to Xu Xin. Well, the author said Gary Locke came to Beijing and brought smog here, and now he left, so did the smog. But I want to ask, why we still have smog today? And then Shi Tailang CQ comments on Weibo.com. No matter what the relations between both countries are, Gary Locke left China, and we should wish him a good trip as opposed to publishing such a ridiculous article. We often say China is a country of thousands of years of civilization. I just can't believe our media published this kind of article. And this poster from Liaoning says, he was the U.S. ambassador to China. Of course, his duty was to work for the interests of the U.S. We should treat him objectively instead of criticizing him in such an irrational way.
Lastly, Esther, Gary Locke has criticized China's human rights record on various occasions. He said the human rights conditions in China have been deteriorating since the 2008 Beijing Olympics. On his farewell press conference, he urged China to improve its human rights record. What is being said about this?
Well, based on what I've seen, lots of posters don't seem to welcome his remarks in this field. First, have a listen to 麦子的冬天, who remarks, Gary Locke made it quite clear what he did in China in his farewell speech. He met with some religious leaders and human rights lawyers, visited some minority groups in Xinjiang and Tibet, and successfully promoted American values. We should have kept an eye on him. Finally, I'll finish up with this take from Zhao Shanchu. Gary Locke ignored a fact that over the past few decades, China has made huge progress in improving people's standard of living, and Chinese people are enjoying more and more rights.
Some thought-provoking perspectives on U.S. Ambassador Gary Locke's departure. Thanks, Esther. That was China Take researcher Esther Dong with a look at Gary Locke's farewell to China. Next up on China Take, some of the top trending phrases on China's most popular search engines.